I am reading from a Stein reader, edited with an introduction by Ulla E. Dido. This is the reader on Gertrude Stein's various works. I'll be reading some of the shorter works. The Polish sculptor Eli Nadelman, 1882 to 1946, who executed highly polished sculpture forms that tended increasingly towards geometric reduction, is another subject Stein used to define creativity in 1911, when she also worked on the portraits of Picasso and Matisse. The portrait opens with Nadelman's capacity for thinking, separate from his capacity for feeling, which is associated with loving women. Thinking and feeling are placed in the context of this central artistic preoccupation with light and its full expression, which can be attained only by an artist whose feeling merges with his thinking, as she sees Nadelman's finally failing to do. Stein said of Picasso also that he walked in the light, what in her working notes she called Nadelman's steady, brilliant inside flame is unable to realize itself in perfected art, because his feeling and thinking do not merge. As in all the early portraits, it is important not only to see, but to hear such key words and the ways they are composed into the dramatic fabric of an evolving piece. And now, here's the text. There was one who was a great man, and his head showed this thing, showed he did thinking. There was one who was a great man, and his face showed this thing, showed sensitive feeling. There was one who looked like the one who was a great one. This one looked like the other one who was a great one. There was one who looked like both of them. He did look like that one, the one who was a great one, the one who did thinking. He did look like the other one, the one who was a great one, the one whose face showed this thing, showed sensitive feeling. There was one, and he looked like both of them, like both of the men who were great men. He did look like one. He did look like the other one. He did look like both of them. He was one of a family in which there were 7 children, and he was the 7th one. He was one who had very much light coming out of him. It came out of him, and it was a wonderful thing, when he had been one working and then was one discovering himself, being one being living. He was one certainly doing thinking. He was one looking like one who was a great one, and that great one, had been one greatly thinking, and his head did show that thing did show that he had been one greatly thinking. The one looking like this one was one feeling like light being something being existing. He was one looking like someone who was a great man, and who had been one showing this thing in his face, which was one showing sensitive feeling. There was then one looking like one man who was a great man, and looking like another man who was a great man. He was one looking like both of them. He was one feeling light being existing. He was one completely thinking about expressing light being existing. He was one completely working. He was one needing to be one completely loving women. He was one feeling light being existing. He was completely thinking about expressing light being existing. He was one needing to be one completely loving women. He was one completely thinking about expressing loving women being completely in him. He was one who was working. He was one who was completely working when he was working. He was one looking like one man who had been a great man and greatly thinking. He was one looking like one man who had been a great man and greatly feeling light being existing. He was one looking like both of them. Light was coming out of this one. This one was needing to be one completely loving women. This one was one who was completely working. This one was one who was completely thinking about expressing light being existing. This one was one who was completely thinking about expressing being one completely loving women. This one Was one being sometimes completely convincing, as being one expressing light being existing, as expressing completely loving women, as expressing completely thinking about expressing something? This one was one being sometime completely convincing, as being one expressing light being existing, as expressing completely loving women, as expressing completely thinking about expressing something. This one was then completely convincing, as one not being one realizing light being existing, as completely loving women. This was one completely being convincing, as being one not expressing light being existing, not expressing completely loving women. This one was one having light coming out of him. This one was not expressing light being existing. This one was one loving women. This one was not expressing needing loving women. This one was not expressing completely loving women. This one was completely working. This one was one expressing thinking. This one was one completely working. This one was one completely expressing completely working. This one was one expressing thinking. This one was one having light coming out of him. This one was not one expressing light being existing. This one was one expressing thinking. This one was one expressing complete working. This one was one not expressing complete loving women. This one was one having some light coming out of him. This one was one not expressing light being existing. Okay. Next up, play. The commentary. Like many of the early portraits, including Picasso, Orta, or One Dancing, and Nadelman, this piece is an exercise in disciplined writing with a reductive vocabulary. Here, a motif that is a single word, the piece which Stein, in a tiny hand at the top of the first manuscript leaf marked story, is the most extreme example of insistent design built on the word play, repeated and modulated as noun and verb in narrowly shifting grammatical forms. By this means, the story becomes not a narrative of characters, events, and objects that might be identified, but a grammatical and musical happening of one word. The word play must be read in all its meanings, from game to performed amusement, with the pronounced musical character ranging from children's ditties to ballet or dance. What appears to be a simple, childish procedure becomes a sophisticated redefinition of composition, a portrait of a word. And now the text. Play, play every day, play and play and play away, and then play the play you played today, the play you play every day. Play it and play it. Play it and remember it and ask to play it. Play it and play away. Certainly everyone wants you to play. Everyone wants you to play away, to play every day, to play and play, to play the play you play every day, to play and remember it and ask to play it, and play it and to play away and to play every day, and today and all day. That's the way to play every day and all day, to play away, to play and play and play, to play and to remember what you play, and to play it the next day, and to ask to play it another day, and to play it and to play it every day, to play it today and to play it all day. This is the way to play. Everyone wants them to play all day, to play away, to play today, to play all day, to play every day, always to play. Everyone is very glad to have them play all day, to have them play every day, to have them play and play and play. Everyone is certain that some of them are playing and playing every day and all day and today. Everyone is certain that some of them are playing and remembering and playing again what they were playing. Some of them are certainly playing. Everyone is wanting some of them to be playing, to be playing today, to be playing all day, to be playing every day, to be playing away. Some are certain that playing is good for them, good for some of them, playing all day. Every day is good for them, good for some of them. Some are going to be playing all day, playing every day. Some are going to be playing today, going to be playing away, going to be remembering to play, and going to play every day, all day, going to play and play and play. Some play every day, play all day, play every day and all day, play all day, every day. Some play and play and play and play all day and play every day. Some play and remember what they play and ask to play that again the next day, and they play it again the next day and play it all day and play and play. Some play every day, some play all day, some play today, some play and play. Some play and play and play. Some play every day and all day. Some play away. Some play and play and play. Alright. Next up, Bon Marche Weather, the commentary. A few pieces of the spring of 1911 bear as titles the names of locations in central Paris. Rue de Rennes, a busy shopping street. Galerie Lafayette, a department store. And one, Mi-Carême, refers to mid-Lent. Other pieces directly portray individuals or groups, most often artists. Au Bon Marche, literally, at the well-priced market or store, is a department store in Paris. The adjective Bon Marche means reasonably priced, a good buy. Bon Marche weather, Stein never used accents when writing French, shows how shopping and weather connect. This piece is a study of a common phrase we use in talking. It begins with the weather, the eternal topic of conversation that helps us keep our days from silence and emptiness. Very pleasant weather we are having, for example. This oddly constructed but common colloquial phrase leads to others that employ the same phrasing about different topics: eating, traveling, the season, and above all, shopping. The phrase triggers the study of how one stayed conversational comments leads. The phrase triggers the study of how one staid conversational comment leads to another, one observation to another, one purchase to another, and another in one place and another. And now the text. Very pleasant weather we are having. Very pleasant weather I am having. Very nice weather everybody is having. Very nice weather you are having. Very nice eating everybody is having. Very nice eating I am having. Very nice eating they are having. Very nice eating you are having. Very comfortable traveling they are having. Very comfortable traveling you are having. Very comfortable traveling I am having. Very comfortable traveling everybody is having. A very bad season everybody is having. A very bad season pretty nearly everybody has been having. A very bad season they have been having. A very bad season I have been having. A very bad season you have been having. A very bad season you are having. A very bad season they are having. A very bad season almost everybody is having. A very bad season I am having. There are a very great many things everybody is buying. There are a great many things you are buying. There are a great many things they are buying. There are a great many things I am buying. There are a great many things not anyone is buying. There are a great many things I am not buying. There are a great many things you are not buying. There are a great many things some are not buying. There are a great many things a great many are buying. There are a great many things a very great many are buying. There is a great many things a great many are buying very often. There are a great many things a great many are not buying very often. There are a great many things a good many are buying very often. Very many are being living. A very great many are being living. Some are not going to be any bigger than they are, and they are going to be different in their proportions. Very many are going to be bigger than they are and are not going to change much in proportions. Very much are not going to be any taller, and their proportions will later be like those of their mother. Very many are not going to be any taller, and later their proportions will be different. They will be like those of their father. Some are not going to be any taller, and they are as tall now as their mother, and their proportions will not be like those of their mothers later when they are older. Some are not going to be any taller, and they are as tall now as their father, and their proportions will not be like those as of their father. Some are later going to be taller. Some are later going to be fatter. Some are quite tall, some are quite small, some are quite fat, some are not so fat, some are quite thin, some are not so thin. Some are ones needing to go very often to buy something they are not then buying. Some are ones not needing to go so often to buy something they are not then buying. Some buy something, and it is something they might have been buying somewhere else than where they were buying that thing. Some buy something, and they certainly would be buying that thing where they were buying that thing. Certainly, a very great many are buying something where they would be buying that thing. Certainly, a very great many are buying something, and they might not have been buying that thing. Certainly, a very great many are buying something, and they might have been buying that thing in some other place, and where they did buy that thing. Okay. 1. Carl van Vechten. 1, instead of a name for the title or the person portrayed, appears more than once in Stein's work, always to depersonalize a subject and remove it from anecdote and incident. Here, however, she plays a game following 1 with 2, omitting 3, but adding 4 and even 5, until we wonder whether to think of 5 characters or 5 acts that may make almost a play. This phrase is played with a subtitle in the manuscript, where an alternative also appears, a kind of play. The reference to a play and other details here might also connect with Stravinsky's ballet, Le Secret du Printemps, whose second performance on the 2nd of June 1913, Stein, Toklas, the actress Florence Bradley, her sister Alix, and Carl van Vechten attended. Sitting in the same box. Van Vechten's pleated silk shirt is in the portrait, which is altogether theatrical, with gold, boxes, scenes, costumes, colors, and coaches punning with coats. It is punctuated with irregular rhythmic beats, repeated motifs, and the number prominently centered in the manuscript and thus printed in the reader. Carl van Vechten, 1880 to 1964, arrived in Paris the 29th of May, 1913, with a letter of introduction to Stein from Mabel Dodge. He knew Stein's portrait of Mabel Dodge at the Villa Curonia, and had heard of her at the International Exhibition of Modern Art, the Armory Show, of February through March 1913. Stein responded to the introduction by inviting Van Vechten to dinner on Saturday the 31st of May. Her account in the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas of the events that became the beginning of one of the most important friendships of her life is not historical, but fictionalized to dramatize the meeting, as is Van Vechten's own account. They did not meet for the first time as strangers at the Stravinsky Ballet, but had met 3 nights earlier at her studio for dinner. By the time Stein met Van Vechten, Alice Toklas and Pablo Picasso were already established as her 2 most important friends. Van Vechten, whose faith in her work and whose efforts to publish her never flagged, became Stein's 3rd lifelong friend. Their correspondence documents their lives, Stein's problems with publication, and the cultural history of Paris and New York. Stein returned to these 3 friends in 1923 in Nice, with 3 second portraits, included in the Reader, written in short succession to mark their great importance to her and her devotion to them. 1. In the ample checked fur, in the back and in the house, in the by next cloth and inner, in the chest, in mean wind. 1. In the best, most silk and water much, in the best most silk. 1. In the best might last and wind that. In the best might last and wind, in the best might last. Ages, ages, all what sat. 1. In the gold presently, in the gold presently, unsuddenly, and decapsized and de-walking. In the gold coming in. 1. 1. Not in stable, none at ghosts, none in the latter spot. 1. 1. An oil in a can, an oil and a vial with 1,000 stems, an oil in a cup and a steel sofa. 1. An oil in a cup and a woolen coin, a woolen card and a best satin. A waterhouse and a hut to speak, a waterhouse and entirely water, water and water. 2. 2. A touching white shining sash, and a touching white-green undercoat, and a touching white-colored orange, and a touching piece of elastic, a touching piece of elastic suddenly, a touching white inlined, ruddy, hurry, a touching research in all May Day. A touching research is an overshow. A touching expertition is in an example of work. A touching beat is in the best way. A touching box is in a coach seat, so that a touching box is on a coach seat, so a touching box is on a coach seat. A touching box is on a coat seat. A touching box is on a coat seat. A touching box is on the touching, so helping held. 2. Any left in the touch is a scene. A scene. Any left in is left somehow. 4. 4. 4 between and hacking. 4 between and hacking. 5. 4 between and a settle, a kind of dim judge, and a great big so-colored dog. Article. Commentary. Unpublished until now, article was apparently written in the spring of early summer of 1913, soon after What Happened, but before the portrait of Apollinaire. On a single short list of early pieces, the title article is followed by the name Picabia in parentheses. In every other listing of work, the title is only article. In the parentheses mean that it is not exactly a portrait. How does Picabia, who lived 1879 to 1970, relate to the piece? The first way to enter such a text is by careful reading. Following the words and sentences yields almost no meaning. We instead follow visually and phonetically syllables, letters, phrases, phonemes, and morphemes, in English and non-English configurations to assemble readings. The second way is to follow Picabia's activities in 1913 as they relate to Stein, in the hope that text and context, what the piece says and what we know, may merge. We know that Picabia exhibited in the Armory Show and that Alfred Stieglitz gave him a successful one-man exhibition at his little gallery of the Photo Secession, 291, in March through April of 1913. In New York, for both exhibits, Picabia wrote, gave interviews, and took part with Mabel Dodge in the many discussions of Stein and modernism. These in turn led him to visit Stein after his return to Paris. Picabia sometimes claimed he made not art but things, articles. Though this may suggest a relation to Stein's piece, it is too tentative to allow us to enter the text, and we return to reading. The title that refuses to name a subject forces us to attend to words. An article may be an essay or newspaper piece or an object such as an article of clothing. The text allows both, and a wavering reading results. It relies on the language that Stein, in A Long Gay Book, defined as segregating. Words cease to be stable, unchanging elements of language. Punning makes them audible and visible in pieces, broken into other words and phrases, even crossing from English to French. Homonyms and homophones, separate until meanings pile one on top of another. Acute blessing becomes an acute blessing, or, in French, an acute blessure or wound. Flounders in buckets sounds like a fishmonger scene, and indeed there is a fish course, but of salmon, not flounder. The buckets are bouquets of flowers. Words refuse to behave according to expectation as nouns, verbs, adjectives, even conjunctions in making sentences. Every word we add makes a sentence new. The sections of article separated by indentation, including the one beginning with cousin, that is set flush left by Stein, leave us struggling to assemble the whole article. It is as if Stein, remembering the family dry goods business, was cutting out, seamstress fashion, paper patterns for articles of clothing. She puts together a verbal collage from a cut-out kind of apron and a man's formal cutaway coat, as in tender buttons. She composes into still-life domestic detail that women might observe at an elegant birthday party, clothes, food, flowers, all in decorative formality. And now the text. In the cut-out kind of apron, in the best demander, the puddling... excuse me, let me start over. In the cut-out kind of apron, in the best demander, the pudding, the reasoning, and the humbleness, and the cutaway in the way that there is besides, climate and any number of two. Bertha in a birthday, and so what is there to show it? This that the same time is wounded and winked at in waylaying customs apiece. Climate and any number of two. Buckets in buckets there is more order ordered in. In buckets flounders have any ache intentionally. Any way and a blank with a birthday, acute blessing instead of entirely. Best exchange, best do it, best and most. A climate. Winding in and way in best. Cousin, a course in that which shows that no kind of salmon is fiendish, none is, and so that is. The best and the best. A gin case handsomely, a spoiled not a spot, a spoilt, and the peas not those barring the eggs in and the cuts out. Waving not wintergreen, not cucumber, not a soiled ointment, waving and not winding, waving that there. The sun place, the soon place, the sun, the suck, and that in the suck, the suck. Guillaume Apollinaire, first the commentary. The opening four-word sentence appears to make no sense, singly or grammatically. The words refer to nothing in the world that we recognize, so we return to the words as words, or even to the letters that make them up. Reading aloud, we gradually begin to hear not the words we see in print, but others immediately behind them. Eventually, the two sets of spoken words collapse into one. Give known or pinware sounds Guillaume Apollinaire. The four English-looking words turn into two French-sounding words, a name written as Stein heard it, transliterating and translating it separately into English sounds and words as if she had never seen the name in writing. She put down the foreign sounds in the nearest English equivalent, yet she knew Apollinaire as her original title in manuscript, Guillaume, shows in its familiar first-name form. It all sounds like a baby learning to talk. Of course, Guillaume Apollinaire is not even the real name of the pen name of Wilhelm Apollinaris Albertus de Kostrowitzki, who lived 1880 to 1918, a Pole, not a Frenchman. In 1913, when his portrait was written, anyone hearing the Wilhelm behind Guillaume might also have heard the name of the German Kaiser Wilhelm, which now also enters this strange scenario of French and English word formations. The poet's and the Kaiser's foreign name is transcribed by a foreigner into a foreign language that puts before the reader the subject as name or the subject as words. Most of us say who we are by jumping from our name to a reference, a picture, a description, a photo, an anecdote. But Stein repeats the name as homophone until it puns and plays in the ear. Referentiality is back in a transcription, more literal than we thought possible and more essential to the art of writing than visual appearances. This piece is a portrait of a word that is a name. The anecdotes in the autobiography will not help us read it. The portrait becomes a bilingual eye lesson that is also an ear lesson in new reading. Deceptively brief, it must be heard and seen over and over for verbal possibilities, English and French, grammatical and semantic, auditory and visual. Stein wrote in English, but around her was French, which she spoke as she also spoke German. Her work, even in erroneous formations and misspellings, always includes possibilities of French and even German play extending the verbal world. The words lesson, leave, leçon, leçons are examples. Other French words, perhaps segregating into English ones, are surtout, an adverb meaning chiefly, but also a noun meaning overcoat. Pour, a preposition meaning for, but also becoming the adjective or noun pour, which translates into pauvre. Both these groups are behind sur stout pour César. That pour César pour state ut echoes pour l'état is easy to hear, and behind Caesar marches Kaiser. Grammar also determines understanding. The second line, as printed in the reader, relying on the manuscript rather than the typescript, reads teeth, not teeth. Did Stein want the verb, or did she misspell the noun with a final E? Did she revise forget, or carelessly proofread her original word? Did Toklas in typing err or correct Stein's spelling? We cannot know. But if the word is teeth, not teeth, then fancy teeth becomes not an adjective and a noun, but two verbs, unless it becomes the sentence infants, or enfants in French, teeth. The readings we adopt here, perhaps more than one, affect the next syntactic configuration, gas strips. Stein plays endlessly, but always with a purpose and always with her subject in her eye and ear. And now the text. Give known or pinware, fancy teeth, gas strips, elbow elect, sore stout pour César, pour state at. Leave I lessons, I, leave I, lessons, I, leave I lessons, I. Ladies' Voices, Curtain Raiser. And now the commentary. The tiny playlet explores the world of spoken words, as do many Stein works. Sound, rhythm, tone, manner, and phrasing make its auditory life, which also recalls the storytelling in Ada, the voices in What Happened, and the various studies of conversation. Stein wrote this play of overheard fragments spoken by women in 1916 in Mallorca, probably at carnival time. The location is relevant in part because it explains details. For example, Mahon, the capital, harbor, and fortress of Minorca, a name joined with Christ and Lazarus to produce a biblical ring, though it is not itself biblical. And the Hotel Victoria, the main hotel of Mallorca. More important, Mallorca, a resort with a large Anglo-Saxon clientele, in wartime attracts an international set of expatriates from all sorts of places speaking all sorts of languages. A masked ball compounds the mingling of persons and languages and words that seem, as she says, English, though they may not be so. And now the text. Ladies' voices give pleasure. The acting, too, is easily led. Leading is not in winter. Here the winter is sunny. Does that surprise you? Ladies' voices together, and then she came in. Very well, good night. Very well, good night, Mrs. Cardillac. That's silver. You mean the sound? Yes, the sound. Act 2. Honest to God, Miss Williams, I don't mean to say that I was older. But you were. Yes, I was. I do not excuse myself. I feel that there is no reason for passing an archduke. You like the word. You know very well that they all call it their house. As Christ was to Lazarus, so was the founder of the hill to Mahon. You really mean it? I do. Act 3. Yes, Genevieve does not know it. What? That we are seeing Caesar? Caesar kisses. Kisses today. Caesar kisses every day. Genevieve does not know that it is only in this country that she could speak as she does. She does speak very well, doesn't she? She told them that there was not the slightest intention on the part of her countrymen to eat the fish that was not caught in their country. In this she was mistaken. Act 4. What are ladies' voices? Do you mean to believe me? Have you caught the sun? Dear me, have you caught the sun? Scene 2. Did you say they were different? I said it made no difference. Where does it? Yes. Mr. Richard Sutherland. This is a name I know. Yes. The Hotel Victoria. Many words spoken to me have seemed English. Yes, we do hear one another, and yet what are called voices the best decision in telling of balls? Masked balls. Yes, masked balls. Poor Augustine. Huh. Sorry, I'm looking for the next one to read. Photograph, a play in 5 acts. The commentary. After the long period of relief work, Stein was in Paris again by May of 1919 and gradually returned to her life as a writer. American artists began to come to Europe. Possibilities of publication opened as editors of magazines like The Little Review came to Paris, and new journals like Broom began to appear in Europe. In 1920, Stein wrote her last war pieces and moved into new verbal inventions. The occasion for photograph appears to be a picture taken at a birthday party, perhaps for new twins. Whether the guests line up along a wall for a party picture or a photograph is to be hung on a wall, the wall becomes a set that makes her sigh for a play. From the start, the play fills with doubling. Photographs copy subjects. I'm sorry, I need to take a break. I'm dying of thirst. I will return.